We are live. Welcome to the Contrarian Daily Podcast. I'm Andy Anderson. We have Chris Jeong, Jake Julius, and we're here to blow your minds with some incredible, up-to-date news, current affairs, politics, economics, and everything in between. You know, we created this platform and this podcast to be able to bring news and to be able to bring truth, and to be able to speak our truth in a time where this seems to be not allowed, in a time where we're constantly suppressed, and unfortunately there's a lot of crazy things going on. But we just want to welcome you to the first episode. We're very excited to be here. We've got some interesting things to talk about tonight. So boys, welcome.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having us.
How are we feeling? We're feeling excited about our very new podcast and all of the awesome things that are about to come up.
100%. I am pumped. Just slightly. Not that anyone can notice, honestly.
Yeah, no, I've been doing this for a few months now. Just sort of building up. I had Counterculture News, and now it's Contrarian Daily. And it's been a good project so far, and people are responding really well.
Absolutely. So look, we're excited to move forward this year and cover some incredible things. We've got some awesome events coming up, podcasts, interviews, and so much more. But today we've got a few interesting things to talk about, and I think now more than ever, you know, conversations like this are so important. By the way, if you're watching this, make sure you share it, make sure you like. It's important we get this current news and I guess point of view out there for everyone to see, and it's worth the discussion. I think right now asking questions is so important now more than ever, because unfortunately what's happening is we're not allowed to ask questions, we're not allowed to make statements, we're not allowed to ask for the truth, and unfortunately that direction I think is sending society and Australia as a whole into a very negative space.
Isn't it crazy that just asking a question can get you banned off platforms? Well, asking.
We're seeing it everywhere, aren't we?
Well, I know firsthand. I just got my third community guideline warning from TikTok today, and I thought that I was on track to becoming a star.
Congratulations. I know you were.
And
we're getting calls every morning. He's like, I'm going to be a TikTok star. We're up by 100.
And now I've been told to walk the plank by the platform that I thought had my best interest.
And TikTok's owned by, it's a Chinese company, isn't it?
It is. Look, who'd have thought that China didn't have your back, mate? What's going on?
Honestly, I questioned COVID. I thought that they would be open to an honest dialogue about the matter. Clearly, I'd read the situation wrong.
100%. But I mean, look, this is the issue, and this is what's happening everywhere. Multiple times on Instagram, I've been shadow banned, and you know, my views and my likes are fractional compared to what they used to be. And we're seeing so many people get kicked off and be deplatformed, including presidents, including
there's a sitting
members of parliament
this week. I can't remember what her name was, but it's a Republican congresswoman from the States, and she was banned this week. I mean, apparently she had a few minor sort of kooky views, but it doesn't matter because freedom of speech is everything. And especially for sitting Congress people, some of the most powerful people in the world, to be kicked off the platform and to be deplatformed by a bunch of hipsters from freaking Silicon Valley. That is not okay.
When did we stop valuing freedom of speech? When did we stop valuing as a society and, you know, again, as democracies, the right to have a different point of view, the right to debate topics in order to come to some sort of conclusion? Never in history has everyone 100% completely agreed on anything. Isn't that a fact? And so why right now does 100% of the people in our countries have to agree on this one thing, or you're fined, or you're jailed, or you're deplatformed? I mean, it's getting to a really scary place.
It has its roots in history.
Exactly right. And so the question begs, where are we going? Where are we going as individuals, as society, as a culture? And if we're not asking questions right here, right now, and whether you've had the juice or you're not, whether you are, you know, down the Shimona hole or not, you know, whatever your point of view is, what's happening, the processes that we've gone through, and the lack of integrity that we've seen from government and from media and everything in between, we need to ask the question, where are we headed, and are we okay with this? Because whatever side of the fence that you're on, we have to be able to debate ideas. We have to be able to debate laws and legislation and topics such as this, because if we do not, it's only a matter of time before it affects you, no matter what side of the fence you're on. It's these topics, then it's something else. and all of a sudden everyone will be affected by it. But by that stage, it's going to be too late for you to do anything about it.
I think, in many ways, it's not too late, obviously. There's things that we can do about it and things that we are trying to do about it. But I think that the roots of this, it's a long march in terms of the destruction of free speech in our society and the destruction of not only that, but science and reason and enlightenment values. And we've seen it for decades. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to know what happened in the 20th century and then what the cause of that was the radical left in many regards in terms of the Soviet Union and China and what happened there. And one of the philosophies is a complete and utter disregard of freedom of speech and freedom of discussion. So that long march has then sort of infiltrated our institutions now, especially over the last 10, 20 years or so. And here we are.
I think especially over the last few years with Jordan Peterson, I think that was a big one where he got into trouble over in Canada for questioning the law about what was it, whether you could call someone by their pronoun or whatever it was, that being compelled.
Bill C-16, it was a bill in Canada that said that you are actually compelled to call them by their pronouns. So it's not restricting his free speech, it's compelling him to say something, which is the first time in English common law history that's occurred.
Correct. And so, you can sort of lay it all together. That's where Jordan Peterson got his start and his platform and rose from there. And, obviously then you got cancel culture with comedians, Dave Chappelle, those sorts of things there too. It's just absolutely insane. And walks its way down to a path where now it's in a situation where it actually matters and really counts. We have to stand up and ask questions.
I think that the thing that I'm really passionate about and the thing that I've been seeing happen in Australia, and I got this from watching American political commentators like, Joe Rogan podcast is great for it. I started listening to Jordan Peterson a lot, guys like Ben Shapiro, and the people on the left listen to that and smirk. But these people are incredibly informed and they give a great diagnosis of things. And Jordan Peterson, for example, he's a behavioral psychologist. He's politically, in terms of his political history and philosophy knowledge, it's just absolutely second to none from everyone that I've heard. But these ideas are things that have come about in America and then made their way to Australia because people know that what happens in America, Australia is downstream of that. So I noticed that happening, and then I thought to myself, is that happening in Australia? If I walk onto a university campus, which I've spent a few months there, unfortunately, not for me. If I walk into a university campus tomorrow, will I be bombarded by ideas of identity politics? And will the professors there be people who are not only telling you how to think, but telling you what to do? And that is exactly what's going on. And that's why I started doing, when I started doing counterculture news and videos at the universities, where I was talking to the students about their knowledge or lack thereof.
I love that video, which you can check out on Contrarian Daily YouTube.
Yes. Was it rating Trump and Hitler and all that sort of things?
But I think that, for me, it was a lighthearted video. But at the same time, it was an indictment on our education system. Because these kids are coming out of school, tertiary education, secondary education, and university, completely oblivious to how to think and to have a debate, to understand history, to understand the good and the bad. They're just being taught to have safe spaces. That everything is meant to be a safe space for them. Whereas we live in a world that is full of suffering and full of chaos. And if you go out into the world and think that it's going to be a safe space for you, sweetheart, you are shitting yourself.
Damn straight. And this is why, unfortunately, I really believe as a society, we are the softest in history. We 100% mentally, emotionally, and physically. We see the state of health across the world and in Australia and the US. Obesity is through the roof. That's the real pandemic, and that's absolutely insane. We, of course, are now seeing the mental health effects across the world and really how vulnerable people are because they don't have awareness, they're not conditioned for challenge and adversity and things like that. And you're right, it starts in school, doesn't it? And the way that, the next generation is being coddled all the way through, and it's creating this false reality, which is not preparing them for real life. And it leads to mass hysteria when things like Shimona come out and the news and people just buy into it. So, look, I think that we're in an interesting time in history. Now more than ever, it's important we ask questions, we have conversation, we debate ideas and topics, and we look at both sides of the coin. We look deeper than the facade of just social media or just news or whatever it may be.
And just, another thing on that topic as well, in terms of having an open mind to dialogue as well. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that we're doing this. We've talked about that extensively, the three of us. You have to understand that it's okay to be the fool sometimes.
That's right.
And whenever I talk to people who are like, oh, I'm too busy with my work, I'm too busy, I don't really care what happens, I'm not going to vote, this or that. I understand that mentality because I've been there, but at the same time, these are things that you can apply yourself to understand and to know. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make news and politics palatable. And I think that we're trying to do that, but to understand that it's okay to be the fool, because, in the psychological sense, the Jungian sense, the fool is the precursor to the hero. And if you want to be the hero, you've got to understand you're going to be the fool. And by that, what I mean is you have to take your ideas as rudimentary and as silly and naive as you think they are, cast them into the public sphere, let them get torn up, thrown apart, thrown back at you. Whatever you get, you can make sense of it again, toss it back into the public sphere, back to you, and eventually you might have something that resembles somewhat of a coherent philosophical thought.
Absolutely.
100%. And as people can clearly see, Jake is bringing it up because he is the fool, clearly.
Hero.
No, it's very, very true, though, because that's also the way that we learn, right? We have to be able to ideate our thoughts and talk about them and be in the arena of ideas destroyed. Otherwise, if you don't do it there, it's going to be in the physical realm, and that's where that happens. And I know Jordan Peterson was really big on that as well. The fact that you've got to have, put your ideas out there, be debated, right and wrong, be the fool, be the hero, all those sorts of things. Because if you don't do that, it leads to physical confrontations and physical issues and things like that as well. So,
absolutely,
it's interesting times, very, very much.
Look, it's interesting times. It's a time of mixed opinions. It's a time of mixed emotions, and a topic that a lot of people have had mixed opinions and emotions about is about the tennis star Novak, who's just been. Well, first he got the all clear. If you do not know, he has not had the juice. He is loud and proud about that. He has been told he's got an exemption to come in and play at the Australian Open, right?
Yep.
Not a tennis fan, obviously. But when he arrives, he then gets pulled up and turned away. And as you can see, our illustrious leader makes the statement that rules are rules, especially when it comes to our borders. And it's pretty funny coming from a man who breaks all the rules just to go and see his father on Father's Day. But unfortunately...
Was it Evelyn Ray this morning who put out a tweet saying that, he went to see his father and he's just a perpetual fence sitter. He's waited until he's seen public opinion about it, and then he's made a decision. And that is just politics 101. And what we don't need right now is politicians and bureaucrats who don't have a spine.
100%.
Especially in the Liberal Party, who are traditionally, for freedom and for conservative values. I don't have a single moment of time for that sort of attitude.
No, 100%. And you're right. He has been sitting on the fence, and he will wait for his moments to come out and make grandiose statements. But, it's hilarious watching it take place because they're so contradicting. 1 minute it's about lockdowns, next minute it's about freedom. And I mean, pick a direction and support it and move towards it with strength. But unfortunately, I'm not seeing that. And now old mate Novak is copying it.
The thing I love about what is on the screen there is that, old mate ScoMo is saying that no one is above these rules. But correct me if I'm wrong, weren't the politicians and their staff exempt from having the vaccine? That wasn't part of the mandatory thing. And even, I think, parts of the legal system and everything. So I love how he's saying no one's above these rules. He's obviously talking about all of us as the commoners, the lay people. Right. But when you think about the politicians, they're clearly above the rules because they haven't had these vaccines mandated on them, as far as I know. I know there was a big thing in Victoria about that. So none of these people, all their staffers have to have the vaccine, yet, he's saying that no one's above the rules.
How infuriating. I mean, just to further that point,
just to further
that point, I mean, we're business owners, entrepreneurs. We've got chain of gyms in Melbourne. We're locked down for almost 2 years on and off nonstop. And, you've got places like Bunnings that are allowed to stay open. You've got these double standards for larger corporations, yet all of the small to medium-sized businesses are completely crushed. You've got double standards for, again, politicians not needing the juice except, everybody else does in order to work. I mean, again, when he's making statements that rules are rules, we know that's not the case. And we know that us commoners, us laymen are not getting treated as such. And so, I mean, these are things that I think we need to point out and shine a light on the absolute hypocrisy in what's taking place here. And we have to also say enough's enough. Like when are more people going to stand up and say, we're not going to buy into this anymore? We're 2 years down this path. And, look, we're going to talk about predictions later on, but a prediction is that this is going to happen will continue to happen for at least this year, moving into potentially 2 more.
Did you see the videos of Holland having their protests and the police dogs
the attack dogs?
them?
Yes.
I did,
yes.
yeah.
Do you know why that
Disgraceful.
was? No. Because the Dutch government has come out and said that they've got a 6-dose program for the Dutch.
Wow. And funnily enough, we know that Australia has purchased enough for
14.
6 doses.
Oh, wow. 14?
That's what
14 doses.
Peter McCullough said that in an interview. I'm going to take his word for it, but he did say they've purchased enough for 14.
Whether
doses.
it's 6
Of
or
every
14,
Australian.
it's still way
Well,
too
look,
many.
Still 14
that's
that's
right.
take.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's exactly right. And look, I know a lot of people that did move forward and get the juice. They did it reluctantly. They did it because they felt forced into it. They did it because they wanted to keep their jobs and support their family. And they've gone up, they've shown up for number 1, they've shown up for number 2, and now they're going to come out and say number 3, or you do not get your green pass.
And it's just one of the absolute tragedies of this situation. Dr. Stephen Shavura put it so well. I'm about to absolutely butcher what you said. So in the unlikely event
Shout out to the GOAT, Dr. Stephen Shavura.
Things to do, no. But yeah, he basically said that bodily autonomy is one of the most important things that we have because it's what goes into our body.
100%.
And we all know how important that is to us. And for them to have these coercive measures, like my brother won't mind me saying, he got the vax because he had to have a surgery. And he needed to have this surgery. And they said to him, you can't get it unless
That's ridiculous.
you are
It is, yeah.
And that is, hopefully, when good wins out after all of this, when all of this is said and done, that those sorts of actions will be held to account.
I mean, it's going to go one of 2 ways. We have clearly broken so many levels of ethics and standards in medical ethics, etc. We've talked about this a lot in our different conversations and online, but the Nuremberg Code, Helsinki Code, and it goes on, immunization handbook, all stating that you need to give consent, that you need to be transparent in the adverse reactions, etc., and so on and so forth. And we have trampled on all of these, and so it's going to go in one of 2 ways. It's either going to get worse moving forward, and what worse looks like, I mean, it could look many different things, but what worse definitely looks like is the government further telling you what you need to inject or take. And the other way it could go is that we come to our senses and we make it 100% illegal to cross that line again, and we take action on the people that have crossed that line and just feel held accountable. And I really do hope it goes that way. But everybody watching, you've got to have a little bit of foresight and ask the question, it doesn't end here. None of this ends here. This is why I've been so worked up the whole time. People are like, why do you care so much, Andy? Well, I give a shit because I've seen all my businesses close for 2 years. We've lost millions of dollars. People in Victoria have been smashed, in New South Wales have been smashed. And it doesn't stop there, because if they can come in and destroy our livelihoods, destroy our businesses, inject us with whatever they want, what else will they do 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now?
The key is seeing beyond next week. Right, so you can see it, you can see it, I can see it, you watching, most likely can see it as well. Those of us who are pushing back against this, we can see what's going to happen beyond next week, right? And when you see what is coming down the road, that's where things do start getting very, very alarming, where we've got to go back and actually push back against these things quite heavily. Now, one thing actually about this whole ScoMo thing, I saw Monica from Reignite Democracy Australia. If you've watched ScoMo's, it's a great group, everything, fully support what she's doing. But if you watch ScoMo's video about him talking about Novak Djokovic, he's talking about the fact in the future tense. So Novak hadn't actually arrived, and he was already talking about the fact there might be problems with his visa. So I think they knew there was an issue or a potential issue, and it's possibly been held up as a bit of a scapegoat. That's what Monica was saying as well. She was saying it's all the publicity, it's starting to show people that they don't care. That's exactly right. And to try to crush morale, it's like, hey, we're not going to. If someone like Novak Djokovic can't even do it, then what hope do you have as an individual as well?
It's interesting, isn't it? But that's an interesting perspective to almost like let him into the country and then and then put the boots to him when he gets here as well.
Well, they've done more crazier shit than that lately. That's for damn sure. But it just shows you the extent that they'll go to.
It does. Just have a look at the video. You'll see there's the video going around Telegram or whatever of ScoMo talking about it. He's talking about it in future tense that when Novak arrives, if he's got issues, then will cause issues. So just bear that in mind. And the other thing too is they are going to continue doing this. I think what I see a lot of is people saying, "Oh, this is all illegal and this is all negative and stuff." They don't care. Like we're well beyond that point.
Clearly, absolutely,
exactly. We're well beyond that point, and so we need to do more than just think about legal, or, fighting through the courts. That's obviously very important. It's not advocating anything negative there, but we need to think more than that and beyond that as well. So, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, clearly, this has nothing to do with science or health. I mean, we know that whether or not you have the magical potion, you still catch Shimona.
Yep.
You pass Shimona on. Apparently, the symptoms are less than someone without. Although I know a lot of people that haven't had it and had Shimona and have been absolutely fine. And I know some people that have had the magical juice and have had Shimona and have been really bad. So it is very. I mean, I think it's very cloudy water to say that it works. Like how well it works at all. But one thing is clear is that they are doing this for political and control reasons, not for health reasons. And they are locking people in. They are locking people out. They are punishing the unjuiced in order to push more people to have it. And again, this should worry everybody because once anyone is allowed to force you, push you, bully you into anything in order for you to submit, again, what does the future hold? Where else will this go? And so we're now seeing Northern Territory unjuiced. They are being locked indoors, not allowed to go to the gym, not allowed to go to work, even if you are unjuiced, because of 200 cases in the Northern Territory. I mean, this is getting to a really worrisome place.
Yeah, I honestly think that if that were to happen to Queensland, and if they were to bring in those laws, I wouldn't comply. I'm not about to comply. I'm not about to comply with anything really, because I think that good people don't obey bad laws and bad mandates. So I think within reason, whatever, like, I'm not saying that not to comply to anything. Obviously within reason, but there has to be a time where people put their foot down and they say that I'm just not going to cooperate with this. And I really hope that the Northern Territory show some fight back.
Well, I mean, look, we're getting into a scary place where, as citizens, we're now having to make decisions like that, which laws are valid and which laws aren't. And I mean, why is that scary? Because, again, this is all opinion-based. And once you have a lot of people that are now losing faith in government and law as a standard, we then, of course, are going to have some people disobeying every single law. And I mean, this is where society becomes unhinged. And I mean, it's going in a direction where we've got to really take control of this, don't we?
There's a clear lack of respect for the government's intentions.
Well, of course. Absolutely.
I have zero. Like, there's not a part of me that thinks that they've got my best interest.
Well, it's a clown show, isn't it? I mean, the way that the thing I'm surprised about is how obvious it is. It's like they have absolutely come out with these ridiculous laws, these ridiculous rules, these curfews, none backed by science, and their explanations are really poor quality, and you can see straight through it. And for a large part of the population to accept that as truth or gospel.
The thing is, as well, is that, like, our source of information in Australia is we are so isolated.
Yeah.
And you don't realise how isolated you are here until you go overseas and until you sort of experience other ways of life. But our mainstream media and our source of news, it's unbelievable that people only get to see that source of news, because I'm looking at other sources of news from overseas, and I'm getting a better understanding of what's happening in Australia than if I was to, God forsake, ever have to tune in to
Again, it's a worrisome thing when you have to rely on Swiss news to find out what's going on in Australia. But I mean, we saw a breakdown of this during the lockdowns, and the extent that how much was being not shown and hidden from us as a population when the protests and stuff are taking place. I mean, we're literally seeing hundreds of thousands of people marching in the street, and then news reporting 2,000 people, 10,000 people. It's ridiculous. Like, it's absolute nonsense. And I think, unfortunately, that hasn't worked in their favour, because I don't know anyone that has faith in mainstream news at the moment because of the absolute nonsense and lies that have been sprayed across the country.
I think it really comes down to core beliefs, right? So if you don't get it now, you must believe that the government and or the media have your best intentions in mind. And the thing that we all have to just ask ourselves is, has there ever been a time in history where the media has lied and had bad intentions? And has there ever been a time in history where the government has lied and had bad intentions for its population? And there are many, many examples of that happening in history. And we just got to remember that, it seems so unreal because it happened in history. It's like a story we get told. It's happening now. And this is the thing we just got to realize, is that, it's like we're in a movie. It feels so surreal. But it's happened before in history. It's happening again now, and it will continue to happen. But the good thing is, though, is the fact that there's so many people waking up to it. Like Andy was the same. No one he knows, and same with me, and I'm assuming the same with you. No one has trust in the authorities and that sort of stuff now. No one trusts the media. This is a great awakening, as people are saying. It's a huge thing, and if we can get this right and wake up more people, then we've got a real opportunity here to have more freedom, more all the good things that we want to have, and less propaganda and less lies and less hypocrisy. So it's a challenging time. And we have a potential negative outcome and a potential positive outcome, and we've got to work towards that positive outcome for sure.
Look, I think everybody wants safety. Everybody wants everyone to be safe. Everybody wants this to be done and dusted. But I'm sure if you're watching this, you can agree that this could have been handled so much better. We don't need to go down the path of forcefully injecting people. We don't need to go down the path of segmenting society and locking down people that have made an alternative decision. I mean, again, we're heading down a very rocky road, and one that is setting society up for a huge divide and potentially worse. I mean, this is seriously how civil rebellions and wars are started. And I mean, we need to be super wary of this. We've got to have empathy for each other and understanding of each other's positions. And I think that the scariest thing in the last 2 years has just been the division, has been the outright hate and venom being spat across the internet and everywhere else. I really have been surprised.
Disgust as well.
Exactly.
The disgust is the one for me that really doesn't sit well with me, because I'm going to use Hitler and the Nazis as an example. I know everyone does that, and it can be potentially a false equivalency. But Hitler used a public health campaign at the start of his reign.
Yeah.
And it was against tuberculosis. And there was some positive outcome from it. But Hitler had an inclination towards disgust. It was permeating the whole country. He then went to the factories and he told them to clean up the factories. Beautification. Beautification of the factories. And he gave them a chemical to use. And the chemical that he told them to use was Zyklon B, which is eventually what they would use in the gas chambers against the Jews. So the emotion of disgust is one that's incredibly dangerous. And there is disgust that is floating about our country right now towards people who are unvaccinated. We saw this at Christmas. We all knew somebody who was going to go to a family gathering, but then people were telling them not to come because they were unvaccinated. It happened to me.
Watch your language, by the way.
Unjuiced. It happened. It happened to me, and it's something that is extremely concerning to me. When I see that disgust, then that lends credence to the idea of segregation.
Well, that's right. And sorry, Kate, quickly, I mean, this is why we've enjoyed Dr. Stephen Chavur so much, and his views on political history and history in general. And I think we need to shine a light on those factors that so many people these days, especially the younger generation, don't know anything about prior history. And unfortunately, if we don't pay attention to narratives like that and literally what has taken place in these countries, in World War I, World War II, etc., we're going to repeat the same mistakes again and again. You need to connect the dots.
On a positive note, though, I'll let you go straight after this, but on a positive note, though, kind of a positive note, I guess, there's a book called Disparities and it's by Thomas Sowell, Disparities and something else. But basically, one of the things that he talks about, which is really interesting, is the way that the market punishes people who use segregation. So he used the example of the African American segregation and the Rosa Parks example of African Americans having to use different buses or sit at the back of the bus. The market punished them because that was their main source of income, was African Americans who would use the bus. So the bus drivers and those companies actually didn't want to enforce those rules. It was the bureaucrats and the government who were trying to enforce those rules. And then eventually, as well as civil rights activists were very important, another thing was the strikes that happened from the bus companies as well. So the market definitely punishes these mandates and segregation, because you're looking at it in hospitality right now. People are boycotting hospitality. People don't want to go to bars. They would rather have a house party because half their mates don't have the use. So, and I went out on, I shouldn't say that, but I may have crossed enemy lines a few times, and it was dead, absolutely dead. Places that are normally bustling, they were just dead. Restaurants, cafes, everywhere you look.
Stress on small businesses is real, guys. It's real.
It is. Yeah, so I just, with that, obviously make a conscious effort, guys, to
vote with your money.
Yeah, but also to be kind to hospitality workers as well, especially if you have those sort of interactions with them as well, because they're doing their job.
Great. Now, can I have my piece now, guys?
No, okay.
Yeah. Just coming back to your original point about disgust and everything too, one thing that we need to be very, very mindful of is that we don't fall into the same trap. Right, because it's very, very easy for us to look at the other side with people wearing masks and all those other things like that and feel that same level of disgust towards them. And it's difficult. We've got the high road. We've got to keep the high road. And if we fall into that level of disgust against the other side, now I'm not talking about the elites and the politicians. I think we've got every right and every reason to feel disgust towards those guys. But I'm talking about the people on the other side who are uneducated, they're scared, and they're buying all the BS that's out there and stuff like that. We have to maintain that level of empathy. Difficult as that is, it is extremely difficult to do, but we do need to make sure we maintain that as well as a massive thing. And then the other thing too, just in terms of like voting with your dollars, like the whole strikes and the markets and everything, it's really, really important. And that's what we're all about here with Contrarian and also the Global Freedom Rally that we're all about, is we've got to become independent of the system, because strikes and things like that become very, very difficult to enforce when you've got people who they're going to go ahead and work because they need the money. Right, so if we can get ourselves as independent of the system, as financially stable as possible, that means we have the capacity to strike and do those things like that without suffering the financial, as much the financial consequences as well. And so while people are very dependent on the system, there's a great book, Ordinary Men, which I know you've read, and that's the stuff. It's a great book about the police in World War II, who ended up inflicting horrific crimes on the Jews. And a large part of that were the ones who went along with it the easiest, were the ones who were part of the system. They wanted to have a career in the police force after the war, and so they had more, they were far more likely to go ahead with things without questioning things because they were dependent on that system. So we need to, we'll cover this a little bit more later on, but in terms of action items, we need to get as independent of the system as possible, financially, mentally, relationships, health, all that sort of stuff. And that's what's going to give us the strength and allow us to actually, vote with our feet, vote with our money, buy the alcohol and that sort of stuff from alternative sources to have these bars at our friends' places and stuff like that.
Moonshine, baby.
That's right.
Stop brewing. Absolutely.
Exactly.
It's what you're going to see. You're going to see break off communities, and so many things will change if we keep going down this path. Again, I don't want it to. I want to go back to normal. I want to live life. I want to open all my businesses and just move forward with the vision that we had. But if we do not do something about some of the current situations, it will go down a path that we're not looking forward to. And I think, again, the censorship side of things has been a huge thing playing on my mind. Something that really worried me a lot. I'm waiting for Joe Rogan to get censored or kicked off. On that note, he's been doing some great podcasts lately, clearly very intrigued with what's taking place, having a look at some of the things that do not make sense, which is everything. And he's interviewing some great doctors that have been shunned. Why? Not because they're underqualified, not because they haven't worked with the CIA, with the government. I mean, one of them, Dr. Robert Malone, actually created the mRNA, which has been used in this juice. And unfortunately, these people are getting completely taken off the interwebs, getting silenced because of their point of difference or their difference of opinion. And if you are watching, definitely go check out these two podcasts. Joe Rogan's done a great job. One of the great things about Joe is that he keeps his opinions out of it as much as possible and really tries to be objective. And I think he's done a great job with these 2 episodes. So if you're watching it, check out Dr. Peter McCullough's episode and Dr. Robert Malone's episode, because they are mind-blowing, to say the least.
They're game changers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Dr. Robert Malone's story is fascinating. Yeah. He was literally working. He still does. He works with the CIA, with the Defense Force. He works with the government. He was connected to the CIA, who were in Wuhan at the time that the virus was released. And it goes on. And I think what's taken place in the stories that both of these guys tell about them, the solutions not being listened to, about a lot of the solutions being completely destroyed or burnt down, or factories with some of the remedies to the virus being completely annihilated in order for the push of the juice to be the main thing. It's mind-blowing to see what's taken place, and a lot of people have made a lot of money out of this. I think we need to be aware of what's going on. Great references.
Why is the juice the only treatment? And it's not even a treatment, right? Why is it the only thing that people can do?
Money, baby. It's all about dollar. This is one of the fascinating things. In lockdowns, who makes the most money from that? All the technocrats. We have huge amounts of wealth being transferred because you cannot go down to your local shop and purchase clothes or food or any of these other things. You can only go to the big supermarkets. You can only shop on Amazon. Facebook, all these other platforms are making huge amounts of money on advertising during this period of time. And then, of course, you have, we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but you look at who owns shares in the V companies, and you've got companies like BlackRock, which is a combination of Bill Gates and Google and these other technocrats all owning one company that then buys into these vaccine companies. And there's a lot of people getting very, very rich right now, whilst a lot of the civilians get very, very poor.
It's the destruction of the working class, the middle class, and they want to take all of us and put us into the poor. The poor is the way of life. And why was it that bodyloads were essential, but gyms weren't, and PTs and things like that weren't? It's not about health and everything. And obviously the treatments are literally just be healthy, because the people who were suffering most had multiple comorbidities. I think it was like 4 or more comorbidities, and it's just absolute insanity that the only thing that can fight this thing is the juice. And don't forget as well, it's an illness that people have a 99.8% success rate in terms of recovering from, without.
That's ridiculous. If you look at the data, you look at the stats, it's laughable. A child, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone watching this, but I believe if you are under the age of 18, you are more likely to be hit by lightning than to have serious negative effects from the Shimona. So, the stats are crazy. There's been mass overreaction to all of this, purposely, of course. And I feel for everybody that's been involved, which is everybody, because
the media is the enemy. Yeah. I've got people who are reasonably close to me, intelligent people who are telling myself and my girlfriend, please go and get the juice. Please, I don't want you to end up in hospital. I don't want you to die. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what has possessed you to think that? Because that is just so beyond unrealistic that it's just crazy. And for you to come and tell me that, first of all, don't worry about what I do with my medical decisions, because that's not your business. I know that you think that because of my corona, that it's all of a sudden your business, but it's not. It wasn't before. It's not now. It won't be after. That's our business. But for people to genuinely be thinking that, obviously there's a level of fear that's involved as well, with young people who are scared to live their lives, scared to go outside, scared to interact with friends, because they genuinely think they live in fear of this thing.
Yeah.
And it's
also
bad for demographics, but it's not something to live in fear about.
No, it's not. And it's also cognitive bias or dissonance, or one of those things where it's like, once you start taking those little steps in that direction, no matter what evidence is showing that you're wrong with your decision, because you've made those steps and taken that action down that pathway, it's so much harder for you to actually turn around and say, I was wrong.
Your ideas become a part of you.
That's the problem. Every time you put on that mask,
ideas, they're disposable, they're interchangeable. Like we're going to change our philosophies copious amounts of time throughout our life. But with the Sharona, it's like the ideas are a part of you. They're a part of your identity. I'm on this team, and I can't leave this team.
Well, that's so true. I mean, I think we need to just be humble as individuals and be willing to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I would be stoked if we woke up tomorrow and not about everything, but was wrong about a lot of things, because I hate not trusting. I mean, I used to trust 100% authority in the government and everything like that. But now, unfortunately, I've lost a lot, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be worried about these things. So, look, I think you have to be willing to be wrong. You've got to be willing to look inside yourself and ask better questions and have a good debate. Let reason and let truth be the guide, and have some, again, great debate and be rational about your decision making and your thoughts. Guys, again, if you're watching this, make sure you share it. Make sure you get this out there. We're going to be doing this podcast every single week. We're going to have some great guests on board. And look, there's going to be a lot going on. What are your predictions for the coming weeks and months? Let's not go too far down the track, because you'll go down the rabbit hole. We'll say that for another episode. But what are your predictions? I mean, we are now seeing restrictions as of today being rapidly enforced across New South Wales, Victoria, and we're also seeing Northern Territory do some absolute nonsensical restrictions on the unjuiced. What do you think is going to happen? More lockdowns, for example.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, and I'm not going to speculate about lockdowns and stuff. And the boys are sort of having a bit of a laugh there, because I've been reading a book from Klaus Schwab, The Great Reset, and we'll be doing a breakdown of that as part of this podcast over the coming weeks, and it lays out their game plan. So I definitely think they're going to keep on going with the same playbook, and there's nothing's going to change. We're on the lookout for food shortages, potentially like fuel shortages and things like that as well. Like it's already starting to hit. I think it was in the mainstream media about meats being limited again, and they're blaming COVID, but it's not that as well.
I just want to touch it quickly. Yeah. It sounds so crazy talking, like making those watch out for food shortages, but literally it was on the news today. It's like this is happening right now, and it's Twilight Zone. Like it really is, but it's unfortunately we have to worry about these things.
Yeah, I understand. And they're not going to ease up on the max. It's going to get worse. Or stay the same, if not get worse. It's just not going to come back. And I definitely think, like, no matter what we do at this stage, like, it's just too early in the game. Because one thing you have to remember as well, like, this is a war, right? And World War II, it was 6 years, like 1939 to 1945. So 6 years. We are entering year 3, I think, of this. So we've got to remember we're playing a long game here. So definitely, they're not going to ease off, and like the ScoMo was trying to hint at, I think, they're not going to stop. Potentially, as their narratives collapse, something that might even get desperate and ramp things up as well, potentially. But we'll see what happens there. But look, in terms of other predictions for this year, look, literally just watch for the food shortages, watch for prices continuing to rise. The reason why is because they're just printing all that money. Printing money.
Currencies are being printed at all-time high. Inflation's happening.
Correct.
US definitely, and here. My lamb, my freaking lamb is so expensive at the moment.
When it's like $2 or whatever it is, or $190, it's insane. It's just gone up without any sort of fanfare and things like that too. And definitely. The other thing, on a positive note, definitely watch for more. I think community, because I think there's a lot of us who are waking up now, and we're just getting past the shock factor. Right? I think a lot of us are getting angry, and a lot of us are wanting to take action and do things. And so, just watch for that connection. Now, Discernible, which is another great podcast, he had a great saying on one of his things, was basically, when things get darker, lights shine brighter, right? So we're just going to look for the lights, and we're part of the lights, and all of you need to be a light and look for that as well. So, my predictions for this year is going to be the same as last year, if not a little bit worse. Watch for those things, and also keep on watching what we're doing here, because we've got a lot of things that you guys can do to take action. So you actually be less impacted by things you can get out of the system and really benefit financially, because we'll talk about it plenty, but crypto is a huge opportunity right now, especially if there's more money being printed. If you can get into real estate too, get into real estate if you can. But anyway, we'll go down the rabbit hole there a bit. But that's, look, I don't know exact predictions, but that's just my general thoughts for this year so far.
Mr. Julius, what do you think?
Well, you summed it up really well. I'd say the only thing I'd have to add to that is just the fear-mongering by the media. Expect it to go to the next level. Expect the unjuiced to be blamed for more and more and more as we go. Even though we know that demonstrably they're not the problem. The Marcherona spreads between the juiced and the unjuiced. There is no stopping it. If the people who are traveling are all juiced, and that's how it spread initially, and that's the way it's going to go. I expect the bureaucrats to be, sitting in Parliament and House trying to make more and more rules, because that's their favourite thing to do. We all know that's their favourite thing to do. They've sort of reached the pinnacle of their career if they get to enforce rules upon us. So expect that to continue. But I'd say it'll be very interesting to see with future revelations regarding this, how the media spin it to blame the unjuiced.
Absolutely. And I'm very interested to see majority of civilians' reactions to the booster, the third and the fourth. I mean, right now it's about to go down. And look, 1 and 2, I get why so many people did it and sort of, submitted to it. But 3 and 4, it's going to be, I don't know. It's interesting times, guys. And so no matter what happens, we're going to end on a positive note. Yes, things may ramp up. But I think as an individual, it's about getting educated, getting involved, make sure that you're engaged. We're going to be bringing you lots of news, lots of content, lots of conversational topics, and lots of love. Again, we do not take a stand where we are absolutely against and hate on anybody. We are here about freedom. We're here about pro-choice. We are absolutely about freedom of speech.
Unity as well. Unity.
Well, we've got a few things. It's like strength, unity, reasoning, and virtue, right? We can just follow those things. And I think, some people might say 4 words that can really define us. Get informed and get involved.
Absolutely. Boys, it's been an absolute honour and pleasure.
Thank you, mate.
Everybody, I hope you've enjoyed. This is the very first Contrarian Daily Podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.